All right, good morning, everybody. We are on Training Tuesday from the Chief Procurement Office for General Services. Today, we're going to go over any updates and reminders. We'll go through the countdown. We're going to talk about BidBuy and the accounting tab. Small purchases, I'll let you know where you can find some additional training and what's coming up. And we'll finish out with a life hack for today. All right, updates and reminders. The Illinois Procurement Gateway, IPG, there was an FAQ that was sent out to vendors on 10/6 of 23. CPO Notice 2024.03 was issued last week. It let you know the downtime for IPG is going to be October the 19th through October 24th. There is an expiration or an extension for vendors who have expiration dates. For those vendors that have IPG registrations expiring between 10/18/2023 through the end of the month, their registrations are being extended through 11/15 of 23. Training, we're going to do training. We'll have a live kickoff and training next week here on Training Tuesday. All right, so we have only 14 days until Halloween. Thanksgiving is only 37 days away, and New Year's Eve is 75 days out. So again, for any of those procurements that end at the end of the calendar year or our early January procurements, please make sure that you're working on those diligently with your agency and your SPO. All right, we're going to do a reminder on the BidBuy accounting tab. The BidBuy accounting tab is one of the inputs that drive the approval path in BidBuy. It is imperative that the agency completes this tab, saves based on percentages, and then rebuilds for all items. So I'm going to walk through the steps to assure that this is completed. The first step is to select the magnifying glass. A pop-up will appear. If you select Find It, it will show you all optional account codes. You may also select the letter N to browse by, or from the browse by to quickly access Not Applicable. The majority of the procurement method job aids will require you to select Not Applicable. However, there are some job aids that do require you select a different option. Please follow the appropriate job aid directions. After choosing the correct option, please select, please press select. Oh my goodness, sorry. Now that we have added Not Applicable as the accounting method, we need to select Save based on percentages. Once you've selected Save based on percentages, you'll see the confirmation message at the top left. You'll then select Rebuild for all items from below. You'll then see a confirmation message and a system warning briefly appear. The page will refresh and these will go away. You'll need to do this at the requisition stage, and it will carry over to the bid when you convert it to bid. Please note, though, that if you change anything on the Items tab at any point, you must redo these steps to assure that the approval paths are maintained. If you aren't sure whether or not you did this, you can do it again. It won't hurt the system. If you do not see your SPO on the approval path and it is for above $10,000, when you submit the bid, please have whoever is on the approval path, likely your APO, disapprove the bid so that you can have this corrected. There isn't an opportunity to correct the accounting tab after it has been fully approved. So again, if this gets in the approval path, please get it disapproved. Don't just add your SPO, disapprove it so that you can correct it by doing the accounting tab. Small purchases. So small purchases are one of the 6 different procurement methods that the Illinois Procurement Code covers. The Illinois Procurement Code 30 ILCS 500-20-20 identifies the small purchase threshold and notes that competition using an IFE or RFP is not required for procurement under this threshold. It also alerts that agencies are not permitted to artificially split procurements to keep them under the small purchase threshold. The code does iterate that all small purchases with an annual value greater than $50,000 shall have the standard Illinois certifications included. Overall, each CPO is responsible for enacting rules and processes for small purchases. The CPO for General Services established small purchase rules in Section 1.2020. The application portion of the rules outlines, again, the small purchase threshold. Part B outlines that in determining whether a contract is under a small purchase limit, the stated price or value as applicable of the supplies or services, plus any optional supplies and services determined in good faith shall be utilized. When the value is calculated month to month or in a similar fashion, the amount shall be calculated for a 12-month period. If only a unit price or hourly rate is known, the contract shall be considered small and shall not have to exceed limits applicable to the type of procurement. If after signing the contract, the actual cost of completing the contract is determined to exceed the small purchase amount, the SPO determines that the supplemental procurement is not economically feasible or practicable because of the immediacy of the state agency's needs or other circumstances. The SPO must follow the procedures for sole source or emergency procurement, whichever is applicable, to complete the contract. Part C states that the CPOGS may establish policies and procedures to manage the use of the small purchase method of source selection. The SPO may establish additional policies and procedures applicable to state agencies under the SPO's jurisdiction. Part D states that if there is a repetitive need for small procurements of the same type, the state agency shall notify the SPO, who shall consider whether issuing a competitive sealed bid or proposal for procurement for those needs is in the best interest of the state. The rules in code both identify that the CPO may designate a process for how to complete small purchases. The CPO did so with CPO Notice 2018.10. This notice separates small purchases into 3 groupings: under 2,000, between 2 and 10,000, and above 10,000 to 100,000. It requires state agencies to obtain a small purchase designation from the CPO in order to take advantage of the agency having the ability to conduct small purchases without SPO involvement under $10,000. For each agency should have their designation on file. A new form is not required for each small purchase. If you are unable to locate yours, please ask your SPO. The agency is responsible for attaching the designation to each procurement file to show that the designation was in place at the time that the procurement occurred. Please note that the CPO's office does complete reviews of small purchases that agencies have done to assure that the process requirements as outlined are being followed. If an agency is found to not be following the processes as outlined in CPO Notice 2018.10, then the designation may be rescinded. If it is rescinded, then all procurements are subject to SPO review. So the first process outlined by the CPO Notice is for procurements under $2,000. These procurements are not set aside for small businesses. The state agency may source a single small business or SBSP or non-SBSP vendor. No waiver is required. No SPO involvement is required. the executed state agency small purchase designation memo serves as the written determination for awarding the contract and must be put into the procurement file. We then have a process for small purchases between $2,000 and $10,000 for an agency that does have their designation. These procurements are set aside for small businesses. General small purchases are procurements when neither emergency nor sole source conditions exist. The state agency may source a single SBSP vendor. All SBSP vendors with the selected NIGP codes must be solicited unless the agency is able to source a single SBSP vendor. This solicitation does occur in BidBuy. A non-SBSP vendor may be used only after all required SBSP vendors have been solicited and determined unacceptable. An SBSP waiver is required if awarding the procurement to a non-SBSP vendor. That waiver would have to be obtained after reaching out only to the small vendors or SBSP vendors. If none of them are able to fulfill or the prices are too high or for whatever reason that waiver is approved, then you may go to the large vendors. The agency shall authorize the SBSP waiver if appropriate, and there's no SPO involvement required. The executed state agency small purchase designation memo serves as the written determination for awarding the contract and must be put into that procurement file. All right, small purchases above $10,000 will follow these steps. These procurements are set aside for small businesses. General small purchases are procurements when neither emergency nor sole source conditions exist. All SBSP vendors with the selected NIGP codes must be solicited in BidBuy. A non-SBSP vendor may be used only after all required SBSP vendors have been solicited and determined unacceptable or other justification warrants use of a non-SBSP vendor. SBSP waiver is required if awarding the procurement to a non-SBSP vendor. The SPO shall authorize the waiver if appropriate. All right, the CPO Notice 2018 outlines 2 conditions that may affect the small purchase process. The first condition allows agencies to enter into small purchase with emergency conditions. Between $2,000 and $10,000, state agency will determine if a small purchase meets emergency conditions. The state agency may source a single SBSP or non-SBSP vendor. No SPO involvement is required, and the executed state agency small designation form must be in the procurement file. For small purchases with emergency conditions above $10,000 to $100,000, state agency may source a single SBSP or non-SBSP vendor, and the SPO approval is required. When an agency is looking to see if it meets those conditions, we look at the statutory emergency conditions to see if they meet. There are 4 conditions that would maybe consider it to be an emergency condition. If there exists a threat to public health or public safety, when immediate expenditure is needed for repairs to state property in order to protect against further loss or damage to state property, to prevent or minimize serious disruption in critical state services that affect health, safety, or collection of substantial state revenues, or to ensure the integrity of state revenues. The agencies may also be able to complete a small purchase with sole source conditions. Small purchase with sole source conditions may apply for a sole source where only one vendor can provide the goods or services required by the agency, and a competitive procurement would not yield a competition, or sole economically feasible source, where only one vendor can provide the goods or services to the state at a price that wouldn't be able to be matched with competition. A small purchase with sole source conditions between $2,000 and $10,000, the state agency determines if a small purchase meets sole source conditions. The state agency may source a single SBSP or non-SBSP vendor. No SPO involvement is required. Again, that executed state agency purchase designation memo serves as the written determination for awarding the contract and must be in the procurement file. For small purchases with sole source conditions above $10,000 to $100,000, the state agency may source a single SBSP or non-SBSP vendor. The SPO approval is required. In order for the agency to present the sole source reasoning, whether it's a sole source reasoning or an economically feasible reasoning, you will be required to use the small purchase with sole source conditions form. The job aids will appropriately prompt you to include this file. The CPO Notice 2018 includes a summary of all of this information. Here is a summary view of the dollar value groupings, when it is set aside for small businesses, and if a waiver would be required prior to getting quotes from large businesses. Again, you can find this summary in CPO Notice 2018.10. For procurements that require small purchase set-aside waiver, please assure to provide detailed information on the form. Specifically, if you are stating that the prices received from small businesses were too high, please detail how you know this to be the case. For procurements that are designated between $2,000 and $10,000, the APO would sign in the bottom left corner. For procurements that are not designated, which means above $10,000, those need to be approved by your SPO in the bottom right section. You don't have to have both sections would not be signed. It's either below 10 is the left side, above 10 is the right side. All right, so for additional training, please head over to our CPOGS Training Center. We do have our Introduction to Illinois Procurement. Our next offering of that is Wednesday, December the 6th. You do have to register in order to attend that training. BidBuy monthly training, our next one will be Wednesday, November the 8th. You can jump in at any point in time during the day. If you're new, we do need you, or would prefer that you take the whole day in order to have overall BidBuy training. You do not have to pre-register for this training. BidBuy practice sessions. These happen every second and third Thursday. They start at 9 a.m. We do not have a set agenda. It's for you to ask for additional one-on-one support or how to do things in BidBuy. So bring your questions and you don't have to register. Our life hack. So if you want to bring home takeout for dinner, but you're not sure what everyone at home wants to eat and you don't want to have to make another decision today, text or call your person and tell them to guess what you're planning to bring home for dinner. They've planned it without knowing, because as soon as they give you your answer or what their guess is, you have your answer for what you're bringing home that will make everybody happy. This can also work if you're getting ready to go out on a dinner date. Instead of sitting there, you know, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? So guess where I'm taking you. And then you have your plan. All right, if you have any other additional questions, head over to cpogs.training@illinois.gov. Thanks, everyone.